Yeah, what's good? Welcome to the first episode of Chit Chat, the mental health podcast. How you feeling today about it, mate?
Yeah, really good, really good.
Yeah, feeling fresh about it.
I'm not feeling so fresh.
Yeah,
I only got about 4 hours sleep last night, so yeah, sorry about that. But
been a bit of a journey getting here to start off with, but yeah,
it's been a long few months.
Definitely, man, definitely. So if you just sort of want to start off and just sort of explain where the podcast came from and everything like that.
Yeah, of course. So the Chit Chat actually started as a coffee meetup here at Bedford's. Was created by me and my dad, Glenn Carr. And it was a coffee meetup for people who suffered from mental health. They could come, feel safe here, talk about their mental health with people that understood, people with like-minded, who were like-minded. And then we came every week, didn't we? And then from there on, we just thought, how can we get our conversations out to the public without them necessarily having to come to Chit Chat? Because a lot of people don't want to come out in public and speak about their things.
Yeah,
not everybody's the same. So we thought, it was actually your idea, wasn't it, to start a podcast?
You're sort of the idea. The ideas man and the business man. Ran with it. Really,
I take your ideas and just sort of go with them. But yeah, no. So we started the podcast. Just to reach a bigger audience, really. And then for the last 2 months, we've been working on it.
Yeah,
pretty much non-stop. Sort of taking over our lives, really. But no, it's all for a good cause. So that's really good.
Really ecstatic about it. And like as well, we were already friends beforehand. Like we were friends we met about 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think when I was 15, 16, so 10, 11 years ago.
And then we sort of, by no real fact of it, just sort of drifted apart, didn't really talk. And then it was only recently through
Jack,
a mutual friend, Jack Telly Jansen. He basically just started coming here, saw you, we met up, and then we both started to slowly. We're already quite open about our mental health anyway beforehand, because we'd already got to the point where it had to be like that, and we had to talk about our mental health for our own benefits,
our own sakes, really.
Yeah. So we were already there by the point, and then we literally started just talking about, and then I started coming to Chit Chat where we started to open up a lot more. But I feel like, and I've said this to you 1,000 times before, that our friendship, I don't think, would have been as strong if it wasn't because of our mental health.
Definitely not, no, especially with the anxiety. Like we said before many times about having an accountability partner, and being accountable for that friend. And looking out for them and understanding them and doing whatever you can to better their life and sort of constantly looking out for each other like normal friends do. But when you suffer from mental health, it's like it's another step. And you really do have to look out for each other all the time. Like, I mean, we speak constantly, but like partly because we have to, but partly because we enjoy talking to each other all the time. But like every morning, like if you know I've had an average night, you'll ring me in the morning and say like, "Oh, how are you feeling this morning? Are you okay?" Because I think it's good to check up on people, but especially people with mental health, it is important to check up on them. Not constantly, because you don't want to annoy them, and they don't want to feel like you're pushy. But it's very important to just make sure you're consistent on checking up on 100%. Them, because with mental health, I think things can go badly very quickly.
Totally.
I mean, they can improve. They can improve at a good pace as well. But I think on the other side of the scale, getting bad and getting depressed can happen a lot quicker than people really imagine, and a lot quicker than people realize, because I don't think a lot of people really accept the fact of what's going on, and then all of a sudden it happens and they're like, oh god, I don't know what to do.
I think as well, sort of going off that point, like you said, where people sort of don't realize how quickly it can go from sort of one thing to another, especially with anxiety and panic attacks, where like when we were in Nando's the other day, and I started to feel sort of, if I just started to eat too much, and then in my mind I started to obsess over it. And then,
it's weird. We get anxious when we get full.
Yeah, it's the maddest thing in the world.
So stupid. Yeah. That's anxiety for you.
But yeah, that is the thing. And in my mind, I was then, most of the time, if I can feel it coming, I can then observe it and I can deal with it. But for me, because I was feeling low that day anyway, it already got in my mind and I was already battling it. But then the beauty is, because me and Jonny have talked about it and everything like this, Jonny already knew what was going on.
Yeah. I sort of looked across the table and you were like, I can tell with you because you
just go silent.
You go silent, yeah, and you sort of you don't avoid questions, but you sort of give one word answers. I was sort of looking across and I was looking at my plate of food, thinking, God, I haven't even half of this yet, but we're gonna have to leave. And I was like, right, get your coat. We was like, what? I was like, well, you're obviously feeling anxious. Let's go. And I think that's very important of like being able to recognise it with your friends, because walking into a place where maybe beforehand made us feel anxious, now we know that we can leave whenever we want.
100%.
We feel a little bit more comfortable.
And also just making it normal as well. So like you were like, there was no like, oh, we've got to go now, and just like you're really pissed off about it.
No.
It was more the fact that it was like, all right, mate, we'll just go. And it was that
chilled
normality that made it so much easier.
Because mental health is normal. It's one of those things.
Totally and utterly, mate. Like,
it happens to everyone.
It is just a complete and utter mad thing where you don't know if you can. Like, in your mind, it's the worst thing in the world. But then for someone to bring you down and be like, look, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, for you, it's horrific and it's horrible. But for me, I'm going to help you. And it's not a big issue for me. We can leave. We can... Because I think... And I say this to anyone... If your friend makes an issue of it, especially if you have panic attacks and stuff like that, they're not really your mate at the end of the day.
No.
Because if they're going to be like, oh, why can't you just be like this? Why can't you be like that? That is you. Your mental health is a part of you, no matter what anyone says. So for you to struggle like that and for your mates to bring you down, they're not your mates. Bud them off.
And they make you feel like it's not normal, or
they make you feel like a freak.
You're the odd one out. Yeah. Nobody wants to feel like that.
Well, you're not at all. It is just part of who you are. And actually, if you talk to most of your mates have got some sort of problem.
100%. Yeah. When you take the time to listen to people,
100%,
what they're going through. I mean, that's one of the positive sides to mental health, in my opinion, is that when I accepted my mental health and I understood it, and like realised it was a part of me. It's amazing how many people you then speak to in your friendship group, or even like strangers or people like I meet at work, or you meet at work when you cut people's hair. It's amazing how when you're confident in talking about your own mental health, how that makes people confident naturally in talking about theirs. And that was sort of another point of why we wanted to do the podcast.
Oh yeah,
because
100%.
I think us two talking about our issues is going to help other people talking about theirs.
Yeah,
and that was yeah, and that can only be a positive.
And just make them feel more comfortable in the way that they're, going through whatever issues they're going through.
Yeah, 100%. Anyway, so that was just a little intro. Just want to say a few bits about the venue. So we're filming this podcast at Bedford's, and we've got Trendy Grandad Creative Agency filming it for us. So
Big
thanks
up
to them. Also thanks to, he's left now, but thanks to Simon Brown this morning for giving us a hand with the audio, because we're absolutely useless with it. Not very prepared, but that's one of those things. It is the first one. And also about the podcast and episodes and stuff. So we're hoping at first to release a new episode every fortnight, and then eventually weekly if the want for it is there, which we hope it is. And they'll be released on pretty much all platforms. The visual will be on YouTube and Instagram TV, and then the audio will be on like SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Intune, and a few others, but we'll list that in the info of the video, and you can check us out on Facebook, Chit Chat Mental Health, or Instagram, Chit Chat Mental Health, for pretty much everything. But yeah, so moving forward, talking about growing up with mental health, I'll let you take the lead on this one, mate.
So yeah, where to start? No, so just I don't think you. Before I go straight into it, I don't think you really realise you have any sort of until you I know we'll come back to it in a little bit, but also the fact that until you really know what it is or understand it, I don't think you and yourself know what it is.
No.
So, like, for anyone who's younger, who doesn't know what they're going through or think they're not normal.
Yeah. Speak to an older person.
Yes.
I'd say your mum or dad, or if you're not confident in speaking to them, maybe speak to maybe a friend that's older, like I don't know, or even an uncle or an auntie that you're closer to. We are all closest to our parents, but sometimes your parents are the hardest people to speak to because your fear of judgment, or you don't want to let them down, which is obviously mental health is not letting someone down, but we all have these thoughts when we're going through the initial stages of mental health. I think
totally,
it's a daunting thing.
Yeah.
And, like you said, we do go through a phase, I think, where you don't think you're normal and you sort of don't know how to approach conversations because you don't want to be judged.
But, yeah, so for me, starting off at 12, 13 was probably when it first all spiraled out. So I was, young lad, freshly into high school, thinking he was top banana.
Top banana.
Top banana. And it's just sort of where my life sort of crashed down a little bit through some horrific bullying that lasted till I was about 15. And I mean, to the point where I was going in every single day and just the battle wasn't even the fact that do you know what? From then until I started to get better after getting sober and everything like that, which I'll talk about in a little while, it was for me, the madness was that every day was just a battle for like 10, 15 years of my life especially through the bullying when I was at school. And I mean, it's so hard to explain, but that fear you have of going to somewhere where you're supposed to feel safe.
Yeah, school should be safe for everyone.
And this isn't me calling out the school I was at. I'm not going to call them out. But for me, the way they handled that was completely and utterly unacceptable. And the way so at one point, right?
I think you told me about this.
Yeah. So at this point, I was brave enough to be like, look, I'm being picked on. And I mean to the point where I'm coming home every day and I'm crying and I'm coming home in bruises and that initial fear, like my heart, just essentially a panic attack every single day of my life going to school, right? And I said to the school, I was like, look, I'm being bullied. Mum come in with me and everything else. And they were like, yeah, okay, that's, okay, we'll get it sorted. They drawed me into a room with one of the lads that was bullying me, right? Who does that, right? I mean,
here's the guy ruining your life.
Yeah.
Now talk to him face to face.
Yeah, so and the thing is, I did it as well, like completely and utterly confidential. So I was like, I don't want him to see me. They brought me in a room face to face with him and they were like,
sort it out.
Yeah, and they were essentially exactly that. And they were basically just like, oh, well, maybe you need to, maybe you just need to talk to each other about it. And
sort things out.
He's been beating 7 shades out of me for the last
couple of years.
Yeah. And it's just like, you want me to go and talk to him about it. And it's just like, and even after that, I felt alone. I felt there was no protection apart from one man.
Because I think they probably feel like they're ticking the box when they did that.
Yeah, they were like,
oh, hold on, and that is, that's all some schools seem to do.
100%. And for me, and I am going to mention this man's name because he was the only one who made me feel safe, and that was a bloke called Mr. Cadwallader. And he truly and utterly was one of the only people at that school who made me feel protected.
Yeah.
And, and mum and dad didn't know what to do. No. Like, what do you do when, like, you're sent, when you have to as well? It wasn't even the fact, like, so Mr. Cadwallader said, he was like, look, we can draw you out of school for one day, but we can't do any more than that. Obviously, because it's illegal.
Yeah.
So for me, the madness of it was the fact that every position that I was in at school, there was just so much fear. And I don't think I really ever got over that, even nowadays. Like, and we've spoken about this, that
You have that fight or flight.
100%. And I honestly sometimes don't know which way it's going to go either.
No. I remember how scared your sister gets sometimes.
100%.
She's like, "Oh God, what's going to happen?"
Yeah.
Like, he'll be fine. He's fine.
Like
She's like, I don't know.
My
Gets really worried. I'm like, chill out, Sophie. It's fine. We've got this.
Like, my mindset now is to not be like, because instantly, if anyone ever said anything to me, wherever it's not even a negative, where it's not even, they could just be like, "Oh, Grimmy, your shoelace is untied." And I'd be like, "What did you say?" I was like, "I ain't taking that. My shoe's tied up perfectly fine, thank you."
Yeah.
And I'd immediately kick off because I never ever wanted to feel like I did when I was younger.
Yeah.
And that instant sort of pain. So I think that's where it first started. Well, obviously, that's where it first started.
I think mental health starts from, not from birth necessarily, but from a very young age, and it just over the years it takes different forms. But I think we only obviously truly understand it probably when we're 10 upwards maybe.
It's massively triggered by trauma as well.
100%
in my eyes.
Yeah.
And I just think the whole part of it where you just, because then after that I always had that fear where it was like, I don't want to go to school. I didn't want to do anything. For me, it was a complete rebellious thing after that. It was like, right, I'd been let down by near enough, not my parents, but near enough everyone else who said they were supposed to protect me. So I wasn't doing anything anyone was going to say. So I was like, nah, it's not happening no more. So I then started to, obviously then got massively into drugs. And for me, part of it was an escape. Right, that is just one of the main things of it. But I think
it is for everyone though.
100%. And I think, but the other main reason was it gave me a sense of power, something I never had before.
Yeah, especially from school and stuff.
100%. And the people I hanged around with, and sort of the influences I was getting off of it, and people knew who I was, and certain people amazingly feared me, and that's what I liked. It's so strange, and I don't think, unless
but when you go from fearing somebody every day to being feared yourself, that's just a natural reaction.
Well, that is the thing.
Flip of it.
Totally and utterly. And I think if you've never been picked on or bullied, you'll never know the impact of it, and you'll never know the fact that when you suddenly get that power and people know who you are, that's when it all changes. Yeah. That's when you suddenly think, "Oh shit!
Here we go." Yeah,
I've actually." In my mind, I was essentially famous in my own world because a lot of people knew who I was and I had that power. So for me to continually take drugs it then obviously started to become a habit and an addiction. And then it was every single day I was taking it.
Yeah.
And then this is when, because I didn't really think about the thoughts I was having, or the fact I was having, or like on down days where it was my anxiety, I then suddenly was just like I just didn't know what was going on, so I'd just fuel myself with more and more drugs. Yeah.
And you weren't actually letting yourself really deal with anything. You were just escaping it constantly.
I wasn't ever, I wasn't dealing with the fact that, but even on my later years where, one of my friends went, he had a psycho attack on drugs, and
psychosis.
Yeah. And he had a psychotic attack. Sorry, and he smashed, and he was smashing me repeatedly in the face. Or another time where I got jumped by 6 other lads because of certain situations in my life where where I was carrying drugs, and they jumped me and beat me to a pulp. Or another time I was out in the city and I got jumped quite a lot, funny enough.
You seem to always get yourself in situations.
Yeah. But for me, I never dealt with any of those fears. I shrugged them off.
Yeah.
And even going back
because they were just a consolation of the power, I guess.
Exactly.
And people fearing you.
I can handle this. Right? And then it got to the point where, at the time I was scared. Some of those situations, I'm not going to lie, I was terrified. The fear was there. But as soon as that situation was finished, back to the mind, and I weren't even thinking about it no more, because I thought, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this because I don't have to, because I've got these drugs to stop me dealing with it. And then obviously it got to when I was 20, 21 years old, where I was in a relationship at the time, and I had my mental breakdown. And for me, it was like my whole world had just shut off, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I mean, I'd literally taken one drug. I can't even remember what the drug was. It was cannabis, but I'd been on a heavy night beforehand. And I was waking up, and I thought I was whiteying. So I thought it was just me just having a bit of a panic in my mind about it, ironically. And I was like, nah, it's fine, I'll shrug it off. But that pain didn't go. And then I started, and then literally through Christmas, I was just crying every single day. And I didn't even know what I was crying about.
Yeah, it gets to a point, I think I told you about the other day, when there was one point where I used to live in Norwich, and I just remember calling Dad one day and just bursting out in tears. And he was like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't really know. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm depressed, but at that moment in time, I don't know what.
You have no idea what's going on.
I don't know what made me explode into tears, but it's just a sudden rush of emotions, and sometimes I don't think you can really calculate what's going on in your own head, because maybe too much is going on, and you haven't given yourself enough credit for what you've been through or what you're going through, and you haven't really assessed what's going on in your head. You just let it build up, and you haven't dealt with it at all. And you've maybe escaped it with drugs, or you've drunk loads, like I used to drink all the time. And maybe not getting enough sleep, and just general, like, not looking after your well-being.
100%.
And that alone, even if you weren't taking drugs, just not looking after yourself, that alone is gonna make you end up depressed, or or cry, as you said.
Yeah. Because it's just the fact that you're not even, like you said, it's not even the fact that you're taking the drugs. It's the fact that everything else around you, like my relationship wasn't good. I was out constantly. My relationship with my partner and with my mum and dad at the time was horrific. Like, even with my sister, like, God bless her soul, she went through a lot with me. She went through, I wasn't a very nice person.
No.
Now, a lot of people will say, oh yeah, but that was the drink and the drugs and everything like that. And yeah, part of it was the fact I couldn't deal with anything. But that still doesn't take away the fact that I wasn't a very nice person to deal with. So everything around me was just calculating. And I think part of it was that realisation that I wasn't a very nice person. And that sort of realisation that you're sitting there and you're scared and you're alone. And then that moment was the same I felt when I was a 12-year-old boy. And I think that's why I needed to get myself clean. And I thought, I can't carry on being like this. And it even after that took me a year to go and see a therapist. And
it's amazing how long you're in denial for, isn't it?
Even afterwards, and this is the maddest thing about it, I knew I was ill by this point, but I was like, I don't want to go see someone, because inside my mind I was like, I'm going to get arrested and all of this, and just get sectioned.
All of these fears,
and it's just like, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be. And when I say I don't want to be here, it wasn't the fact that, because I went through suicidal thoughts when I was being bullied and I wanted to take my own life. But this wasn't even that it was a fact I didn't want to be here, but I still wanted to live. But I just didn't want what was going on inside of my mind.
You wanted to escape what was going on in your head.
Totally and utterly.
But you still, in a way, knew you had stuff to live for. And I think that's what I was like for a long time. When I had these suicidal thoughts, I thought, so much shit has happened, but I'm not on that tipping edge, you know what I mean? I'm sort of
totally
very close to it, but then I look around and I go, I am so lucky, I can't, I've got too much to live for. And I'm quite thankful I'd never, got to a stage where I completely forgot about that, because I think a lot of people do have that, but they just can't see past. They can't see past that initial,
of course.
That massive depression. Whether that's because I've got a good support network and friends and family that, thanks to everybody that, helped me over the years. Like,
totally and utterly.
People that constantly remind you of what you've got to live for, and I think that's very important.
Yeah. And I just think for it as well that, like you say, I think we are very we are very fortunate to have the family that we've got.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? Because my parents stuck through me through some of the worst things in my life. And I honestly, I don't think as myself, if I was an outsider looking in, I don't think I would have stuck around. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I think that's
you've got
the shit we put our parents through.
Just the madness of it. You've got to show them that sort of love and consideration that just, and it really is that old saying that your parents will go through anything for their kids.
Unconditional love, isn't it?
And it really is that, mate.
But not everybody has that. So, we're still lucky to have that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, of course.
Not everybody has that relationship with their parents.
No. And when I have kids one day, and if they go through this, I honestly hope I'm as strong as my parents and my sister.
Yeah. 100%.
Because I don't think... for me, that is still the madness. Out of everything I've dealt with in my life, the fact that I understand this unconditional love and everything like that, but it's still, why did they stay? Because they could have kicked me out. They could have stuck me on the streets, because I was getting to a point where I was just so destructive. And maybe that could have been stopped earlier in my life. But then what ifs? A part of anxiety, really, aren't they?
It goes back to that situation where we said about we don't ever wish to go through the trauma we went through, but it has made us who we are today. Would we be sat here right now if we hadn't gone through, the 5, 6, 7 years of trauma that we went through?
Exactly. Would we be sitting here making a podcast
and helping other people? I don't think we would have, because we wouldn't have been in the situation where we felt we needed to help others.
Exactly. Do you want to take a little journey down memory lane?
Yeah. Sorry.
I think I've talked enough on this bit for the moment.
You're better at talking than me, surprisingly. I'm a bit of a chat box. But yeah, my mental health started. Well, the main thing that happened in my life, obviously, as you know, I was involved in a fatal car accident where unfortunately my friend died, and that was just a crazy point in life where sort of woke up the next day, or after I'd had my surgery and had the halo cage put in because I snapped my neck in half.
Yeah.
And you just sort of think, did that really just happen?
Yeah.
Instantly you're in that massive state of confusion. Like, was it? Obviously, it was real, but you sort of you're laying there in the hospital and you're like, did that really just happen?
Sort of like just a dream.
Like a dream state of like, I don't want this to happen. Has this really happened? I can't believe it. Like, and all this stuff's going on around you. Your parents are around you. Your family's around you. Friends. And so much rushing through your head. Like, I'm obviously, so many things where you just don't know how to feel. And then the months going on from that, I was just in a state of numbness. Like, obviously taking lots of morphine for the pain.
Of course.
And that just makes you like a zombie. I don't know if you ever had to have it, but it just puts you in like a sleepy zombie state where you just... I'd have friends coming around worrying about how I was, and they'd come and see me at my parents' house, and I'd just be there just showing no emotion, Not meaning to, but just didn't feel anything because I was so numb and so, I think, in a state of shock for a lot longer than I realised.
Yeah, of course.
Because I think when a friend dies, how do I put it? When a friend dies, like, say if a friend died normally of like a disease or something like that, or old age, like a nanny or something, you sort of expect it.
You have time to build on that. And
just
accept it a little bit.
But when somebody dies, from a car accident and dies tragically, it's just a whole nother like God. That like he's gone too soon, and you're worrying about all these different things. So like after that, went into like a state of depression, probably almost pretty instantly. Without realising. I mean, I must have been in a state of denial for about 4 years. Before I obviously saw a psychiatrist pretty much straight away. Sort of like one of those things you pretty much have to do.
Of course.
Which I wanted to do, but I sort of went and saw him, and then like because I related, obviously I've got PTSD, and I did a bit of research, and they did a study on war veterans, and if they did a study where if they allowed them to, because obviously they have to debrief what they've gone through pretty much straight away when they get back to, I mean, I don't know the specifics, I'm not going to act like I do, but I guess when they get back to camp, they have to debrief on what's happened on their mission, or something similar. And then they did a test where they allowed veterans to like deal with it in their own way, in their own head first, and then talk about it.
Yeah.
And it proved that the trauma was reasonably less when somebody was allowed to deal with themselves. So being not forced, but being told to go and see a psychiatrist and like reliving all these things. And this must have been maybe 2 or 3 months after the accident.
Yeah, of course.
And, I'm talking about the things I saw and the things I remembered and all of this. And you're like...
Because from an outsider's point of view, to someone who's never been in a car crash like that, the initial, for me, what was the initial sort of, I understand that as soon as the car crash happened and everything like that, you were unconscious, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but for, what was, I know you said briefly sort of waking up and sort of, but when you realised your friend had unfortunately passed away, was there a sense of denial?
Yeah, well, there was so much going through my head. There's, thoughts of guilt, like, because it was a high speed crash, and there was thoughts of like, oh, could I have gotten slowed down, or was there something I could have done to maybe prevent the situation? And then obviously, it runs through your head, like you think there were so many different factors to it, but I still seem to like. There was still a sense of guilt and a sense of blame on myself for certain things that I maybe shouldn't have been guilty for. But when you're in that situation and it's so highly intense, so highly emotional.
Of course.
There's obviously other parties involved, like Aaron's family and things like that, and you're trying to like care for everybody else, and there's so much going on, you don't really know how to feel.
And I think it's such. Do you know what? Even though we've talked about it a lot and everything like that, I still think it's such a brave thing to talk about, purely for the fact that for me, I understand I went through the bullying and everything like that, but for me, most of it's still in my own mind, where for you, it was actually a visual pain. Do you know what I mean? I understand bullying's a visual pain and everything like that, but to sort of reload that constantly in your mind and then be able to sort of put it in a place. Because I think that's what people sort of sometimes forget with mental health, and especially like anxiety or PTSD, where you do need to put it in a place. Like when they're like, oh, you should never sort of block it out your mind. And it's like, you should acknowledge it to a point and then be like, I've dealt with this now. It's okay.
Yeah.
There
has to be a point of understanding of, right, I need to not move on from it, because I think maybe sometimes that's the wrong word. I think some things we can never move on from.
No.
It's more about learning about them and understanding them and how they affect you. Because, I don't think I really understood what had happened to me for as I said, years. Obviously, I knew what had happened to me, but like the actual implications of like the amount of how much it would affect me for the coming years. I think when you're in an accident, you break a bone. My neck healed in 9 months, but it was the mental side of it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like I think that's probably going to be with me for the rest of my life.
100%.
But yeah, going back to so with the depression, it was just like probably 4 years of like just drinking heavily and staying out late and just sort of escaping it. And then I lived in Norwich with my friends for a couple of years and drinking more and more, drinking all the time, just trying to escape it and like not really deal with it. And then it got to a point where I was like, right, something's going to crack in a minute. My life is going to burst in a minute, because I can't just keep going and keep doing this. And then I finally got help, and went on antidepressants and stuff like that. And they did help me, but I think you've also got to change so many things in your life for headbutting the mic.
Sorry, mate,
you've got to step back and sort of look at your well-being and see what you can improve to help you get better.
Totally and utterly. I think. Sorry, mate.
Go, you're right, Karen.
I think as well, for you to realise that and to be like, because don't get me wrong, if people are on antidepressants and they're on them for the rest of their lives and it's helping them, fantastic. And if that's the journey you need to have, then that's awesome. But I also think as well, while you're on antidepressants, maybe exercise a bit more, try meditation, other things like that, because they will genuinely help. Like, I never went down the road, being an ex-addict, I don't know if I really can go on antidepressants, but at the same time, I don't want to. No. Because I don't want to, in my mind, and there's nothing wrong with it at all, that's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is, for me personally, I don't want to be addicted to something else.
Well, that's what I said with you. When I was on them, I felt that when I was on them, they were helping.
Yeah.
But then it was that fear of, right, when I need to come off them, am I going to be able to... It was like another trauma of like, right, that's another hurdle to cross.
100%.
Because when you're giving your brain extra serotonin and then you start to take it away again, it's like another sort of hurdle you have to really deal with and understand.
I think for it as well, because we talk about the negatives quite a lot of mental health, but I think we also need to talk about the positives as well.
Yeah, there's many positives. So many. But I think we only realise that when you do start to get better, when you're in a depressive state, it's hard. It's really hard to see the positives. But when you sort of not come out the other side, but when you start to understand your mental health a lot more, the positives start to show their head
massively. Like, for instance, I believe you over laugh, and what I mean by that is probably not the right word for it, but humour me. You really and totally, utterly, it's like you're laughing and you don't know when you're going to laugh again. And I think it's because you've been to such a dark place that when you find you're just more humorous. Do you know what I mean? Like, me and you will laugh about even our own mental health, like we said earlier about the Nando's thing.
Yeah.
Right, and I think you just you have to find the funny side to it, because I feel like that is the only way you can get through it, because it's not funny when you're in the moment of having a panic attack or something like that, but when you look at it on the outside of it, and like being in Nando's and you're mashing down your food where I'm just sort of trying to get my mind together, it does have that sort of humorous side to it. And I feel like you need to laugh at it to make it normal.
Yeah, I feel like you have to take the piss out of it to really,
100%.
Because I think if you had an anxiety attack and then for the rest of the day you thought how bad it was, then the next time you have it, it's going to be even worse. But whereas if like I said, when I had that anxiety attack in the barbers when Jordan was cutting my hair, and afterwards I was laughing about it because I thought I was having an anxiety attack in the bloody barbers, and I'm sitting in the chair. He's done half my face, and I'm like, mate, I need to get out of the chair and have an anxiety attack. And he's like, you what? I'm like, mate, I need to get out. So I'm walking with the gown on, like walking out the back of the barbers, and I'm just standing in the staff room, like. He's like, you're right. I'm like. I really don't think I am, mate. I really don't think I am. But then, like, if I don't take the piss out of that, the next time I go back to the barbers, it would have seemed like a daunting thing. But I made it sort of smaller, and I made my anxiety, small and just tolerable, basically.
Totally and utterly. And I think as well that the fact is that you sort of get to that point where you have to. I think when some people find it quite weird when we laugh about our own mental health, and I think we've gotten to a point now where you sort of have to find the funny side of it, otherwise it is just going to bring you down, and it is just going to make you feel like just in a deep state of just hatred, if I'm honest. So I feel like you do need to find the funny side, and you do need to laugh about it and 100%. Sort of enjoy. 100%. You got to take the piss out of life, or life takes the piss out of you at the end of the day. So you have got to laugh at the little things in life, and that is the beauty of it. And I think with your friendships as well, and sort of you realise the people I used to hang out with, I still love and respect them, and I have no issue with them. But for me, my journey was not with them anymore, and I had to move on.
Yeah, I think realising the toxic people in your life is probably one of the most important things you can do.
100%.
Because, but I don't think when you're in the moment of maybe when you're out partying loads, and you're escaping, like we said earlier, taking drugs or drinking loads to escape that, you're not going to realise in that moment. No. I think when I stopped drinking and sort of started looking after my well-being more, and you sort of step away from maybe a certain group of friends, and you realise how little do they. You sort of go, right, how many times are they actually going to contact me if I don't contact them?
Yeah.
And then you start to think, well, actually, have I actually had fun with them if I'm not out drinking with them?
Yeah,
or
totally.
I'm not doing drugs with them, or we're not doing something that enhances. But yeah, I think when you step back and you can see from those people, and you can see you can see how toxic they are, and getting rid of them will help you majorly.
That is the thing, and I think for the fact that you need to understand that just because you've known someone for years doesn't mean that
they're there for you, or they really care.
And you need to. I think it's become a lot easier for us to cut people out purely on the fact.
Stop giving them so much credit when they don't deserve it.
And the thing is, I think for the fact is as well that you have to cut people out, and you need to move on from people, because they might have been your friend at the time, but if they're still bringing you low, then you need to cut them off, and you need to sort of. That is it at the end of the day. If someone's bringing you lower, or they aren't helping you in that situation, they're only with you for the high ride, and they're only with you when you're doing good.
They're only with you for, I had a few friends where they're only there when they could get something out of me because I'm a generous person and care for people. But when you stop giving people those things, or you stop being that person they can go to all the time because maybe you're trying to look after yourself for once. Suddenly they're not around, or suddenly they don't really care that much.
100%. And I think as well. Do you know what? Through the path I've been through my life, I think I've been both of those people. So I feel like I've been
we've all been selfish, and we've all taken people for granted at a time.
And I feel like people have cut me out of their life purely for that reason. And do you know what? At that point in my life, even if people do it now, right? I might not understand it, but I have to appreciate it, and I have to be like, if I'm not even worthy, but if I'm not part of your journey, then that's absolutely fine.
I think that's a good point. I think understanding everyone is on their own timescale. Everyone is going through their own journey.
Exactly.
So maybe somebody is being a bit of a dick to you, or they're not treating you the way they should. You've got to understand that maybe they're just in that part of the journey that we were in, where we weren't nice to people.
100%.
And it's not saying that person won't be a good person in the future. It's just
at that moment in time,
they're maybe not in the right place. They're going through what we went through, and you've got to give people credit. Like we said, it's good to be kind.
100%.
Be kind to everyone, because you really don't know who's going through, stuff behind closed doors.
Exactly.
You really, really don't know.
And I think as well, I'm gonna briefly go over this, but with relationships as well, like romantic relationships. So for me, I've only ever been in love once, and we both.
Me too. Yeah.
Fantastic. Love that. And I think for me that this was, I'm not going to mention the girl's name or anything like that.
Names.
Yeah. Start drawing them out. And but for me, I was totally and utterly in love with her, and I met her in a position of my life where I was away from everyone, and it was very calm and very and it was different. And then we this was like after doing the drugs and everything, so I was completely nutty. So actually the first girlfriend I had after doing drugs.
Being sober,
yeah. And this was about, 2-3 years afterwards. So for me, it was the only girl I ever loved. And in my mind, I was like, I'm ready to be, like, I can marry this girl and everything like that. And unfortunately, the paths were very different, as we've just talked about, and her journey didn't link with mine. And for me, that broke me. And I think that brings it back with my mental health, where I was obsessing over it, where I was like, I could have done this and I could have done that, when in fact, I couldn't have done anything like that. Because you have to understand that some journeys are just different, and like I will
trust the process. That's
100%.
One thing I always say. I think if it's meant to be, it will be. I think we both had, girls in our lives that we'll always appreciate, for the rest of our lives. But sometimes, it at that moment in time, it just isn't working. And I know myself, I buggered up that relationship through my own journey and my own mental health, and wasn't as good to her as I could have been.
100%,
and I'll regret that for the rest of my life.
Of course.
But again, I accept that. Like I said, you've got to understand the things you've done, and take it on and think about what can I do going forward, maybe to, my next girlfriend.
Yeah,
how can I look back and go, right, actually I can do this differently, and I can be that person rather than, mucking it up again.
Yeah. And I think as well, because of it, like, it taught me a lot as well, because it was the first girl I'd ever been in love with. And you know what? I wish her all the best in life, because there is nothing that I hate more, and I've done it in the past, but where people who are like...
Hold grudges.
And they're like, oh, well, she done this, she done... Rah, rah, rah. And it's just like, at the end of the day, her own
wasted energy.
Yeah, it is. I wish her all the best in life, and the fact is that it just wasn't right for us. And don't get me wrong, I still think about her from time to time, as we both know.
Let's not talk about that.
And
for Lewis Capaldi to start playing in the background.
Fantastic story for another day. But yeah, so you think about your you think about your partner from you think about your partner from time to time, but your ex-partner. But it is just a natural thing you will go through, and you do have to sort of move on from it and sort of understand that that person will never change in your eyes, like the way you felt about them, but it's okay to move on and sort of love someone else as much as you love them.
100%. I just seen a point on we've got little notes here because I forget very easily.
We both do, in fairness. So, better to have notes.
Just saying about how when you suffer from mental health, you place yourself in harm's way to help others with mental health. It's another positive, I believe. I think that
can be a positive and a negative.
Well, yeah, because putting yourself in harm's way is...
You can put yourself in your own danger, your own mental health, and other sort of environment situations.
You've had it before, with people that... I think we've both had it, where people have drained energy because they know they can get it from us.
Yeah.
And they know that...
Because they know we'll be... more sympathetic because we've been through that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like a lot of people do this, but certain people will feel like they can take the advantage off of you and be like sort of use you for everything.
Like an agony aunt.
Yeah. Which, we don't mind doing, but it gets to a point where you have to have... And it's quite a controversial thing what I'm going to say. Well, it might not be. Might be. You never know. But you have to have control of your own mental health. And what I mean by that is that you have to change certain things in your life to get better. You cannot get sick in the same... you cannot get better in the same environment you were sick in.
100%.
So you do need to change certain things in it. And I think for that, like... Some people will carry on doing the same things, unfortunately, and not try and change anything in their life, but they want to be better. And I think when it gets to the point...
They can't step out of that vicious circle.
And I think for people like that, they want to get out, but they don't know how. That's when you can help them. But if they want to... but they're like, oh, but I like my life.
But a lot of people like that, everybody around them is the same. So, that, when everybody's the same around you, it's going to be very hard for you to really get out of that situation.
Yeah, totally and utterly. And I think the whole thing is just you do need to move on from it, and you do need to sort of show yourself that you can be away. Like we've said earlier, you can be away from different people and
take priority over your own life.
100%. You need to, totally and utterly. But yeah, it's just a bit of.
Oh dear. God. Just saying about getting help sooner and going back to the point of denial and how I was in denial for like 4 years. I believe that if I got help initially when I was told to, I'd probably be in a lot better position. But I think the help isn't always there.
No.
And you don't maybe know what help you need. Especially in Norfolk, the mental health system isn't the best, unfortunately.
Right.
And it can sometimes be very hard to get the help you need.
And I think, unfortunately, it's because mental health is still seen as a very taboo subject. And no one really wants to... Still, people don't want to talk about it. And they don't really want to... It's not the fact they don't want to put funding into it, because we've had a hell of a lot of positive responses, but... It's the fact that people don't want to... I don't even know what the word is, but it's just like people are still afraid, and they still think that as soon as you acknowledge mental health as an actual thing, then it's like, oh well, you're this and you're that. And I think you need
weakness.
Yeah, and I think if you have mental health and you deal with it every day, you're one of the strongest people, and God bless you and God love you 100%. At the end of the day, because you are a strong person for dealing with it, and then dealing with everything else that life has to throw at you anyway.
Yeah, mental health is just a very small part of everybody's life. You know, we've all got stresses from other stuff, bills and work and family and friends and everything. So acknowledging that is going to help you in the long run. Yeah, so I'm just going to wrap things up now because we've rambled on a bit.
Yep.
Next episode is called Anxiety and Apprehension. And it features Grimmer's lovely mum.
Yes, hi, Grimmer.
Can't wait to have her on the show. And my dad, Glenn Carr, talking about anxiety and like family circumstances and how they've dealt with it, how we've dealt with it, how we've dealt with it together. And then we've got episode 3 is on Christmas Day. Episode 2 is on December 16th. Yeah, and then we've got episode 3 on Christmas Day, which is the revolution of men's mental health with Nick Little from 12th Man, talking about the progression of men's mental health over the years and how we're dealing with it better now, but how there's still so much more to be done. And then episode 4 with my friend Dom Upire, talking about the highs and lows of bipolar as he suffers from bipolar. So really interested to hear about that, really, because I don't really understand it. Obviously, it's something we don't go through. So I'm really looking forward to having him on the show. I'll put all the social info in the description of this video. You know, the YouTube, Instagram, all the links to everything. Anything else I missed?
No, I think you
like and subscribe
on YouTube, and thanks for watching the first mental health Chit Chat podcast. I've been Jake Grimmer.
Jonny Carr.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.